Hey, this is Byron Morrison, author of the book Maybe You Should Give Up. And in my episode for the Business Growth Architect Show, I'm going to be talking to you about the biggest reasons why most people don't achieve their goals. We're going to dive into why your business's growth is never going to outgrow your inner growth. And I'm also going to take you through the framework that highly effective CEOs use to make key decisions that get them to the next level.
Welcome to the Business Growth Architect Show. I am Beate Chelette. I am the host. I want to welcome you to our globally top 10% ranked podcast, where you will hear from industry experts about the strategies that are working right now to unlock hidden opportunities in any market so that you can grow your authority and scale your impact. And now let's get started with the show. And welcome back. This is Beate Chelette, the Growth Architect. With me today is Byron Morrison. And Byron, maybe I should give up. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me here. I'm excited to be on today.
So Byron, you wrote a book with the provocative title, Maybe You Should Give Up. And when we were talking about this interview and we started getting ready for it, you said something that I thought was absolutely blowing my mind. And you said that your business growth is never going to outgrow your inner growth. Tell us who you are and then tell us what that means.
Well, as you said at the beginning, my name is Byron Morrison. I'm the author of the book Maybe You Should Give Up, 7 Ways to Get Out of Your Own Way and Take Control of Your Life. And over the last decade, I've been fortunate to work with CEOs, entrepreneurs, and business leaders in 15 different countries to help them evolve into who they need to become to get to the next level of success. And in that time, one thing I've seen repeatedly is that so often as a business starts to scale and grow, ultimately what becomes the bottleneck is not the wrong strategy, it's not issues hiring the right team or even poor market conditions, it's the CEO. Because the person at the top of the company, they drive everything. And when they're stalling on decisions, they're getting involved in too many different tasks, or not actually leading from the top, that's when things start to plateau. And this is why, for me, it's such an interesting concept that if you actually want to get to the next level, so many people get caught up thinking they need a new strategy or new marketing or whatever it is, was actually, it's them who needs to evolve.
Yes, I love that. And so funny that you say they think they need strategy. We are a strategic podcast, but to your point, mindset is a strategy in my world, because if you don't add that piece to all the execution, then you're just a mindless execution machine, but you don't have the ability to go past a certain barrier. So you talk about limited beliefs, tough calls, trusting your intuition. So what do you see is most often, maybe let's call it the self-sabotage pattern of somebody who says, I know I can do this. We're going to crush it this year. It's going to be amazing. And then something happens. What happens when the self-sabotage pattern kicks in?
Yes. In my experience, the biggest thing holding people back from getting the success that they want is fear. They know what they need to do, but they just don't follow through. And it goes back to what we were talking about before. Like, obviously strategy is important, but you can give 100 people the exact same strategy and they're all going to get different results. What separates them is the way that they think and how they execute on that strategy. And this is why so often we get stuck in our own head. We know that we need to put ourselves out there, but we worry about what people are going to think. We know we need to take that big risk or pivot, but we worry we're going to fail. We worry about judgment or whatever else it is. And this is why I see so many leaders just getting stuck in their own head, where they start to overthink, they second guess themselves, they procrastinate over what needs to get done. And all of a sudden their best intentions and the growth plan and everything else set in place just becomes something that they haven't done. So that's why it's really about looking at, okay, what's actually holding you back? And so often it's yourself.
Is it related to time, money, confidence? Is it a combination out of all of these? Is it insecurity? Is it laziness? Is it the stories that are running in my head from everybody I've ever met who told me I can do it? What, I mean, we should know better by now, right? I mean, it's not like this information is not out there, but why do we What happens that we get pulled back into this?
The reason why this happens is what you have to understand is that your brain has been wired for quantity of life. And essentially what that means is it's been programmed in a way that it wants to survive. It doesn't want to thrive. It wants to keep everything the same types of relationships, the same amount of weight on your body, the same amount of wealth, happiness, and joy. It wants to keep everything the same because everything in your past, it's been survived, meaning it's far safer than anything new. Whereas all of your goals, your dreams, your aspirations, the growth you want to create, it's all new, meaning it brings with it an inherent risk. And this is why as you start to move towards your goals, your brain fills your head with all of these mental blocks. What if you fail? What if you're not good enough? What if you get rejected? It puts all these mental barriers in place because it wants you to trip up. Because even though you might be unhappy in the situation you're in right now, or you're feeling unfulfilled or stuck, your brain can predict what's going on because it feels comfortable. And this is why anyone listening to this has to understand, like, the success and the life that you want to create is on the other side of that fear. But until you start putting yourself out there and forcing yourself to overcome it, you're never actually going to break through it.
You just said something, forcing yourself through it. So is it like a discipline? Is it like a muscle that I have to grow? So let's just go through it through an example. So, our beehive, our audience can relate to that. I get up today, I have to go pick up something at the pharmacy. They screwed up. It's not ready. Now they're jeopardizing a procedure that I have scheduled because it's not, ready at the right time. So my mind, and I can watch my brain already going like, oh my God, it's going to be a really bad day, right? The day already started bad. Then I need to record a video and I feel like my energy isn't as good as it normally is because I'm dragging things in there. So what's happening to us when we are now in a place where something, let's say, triggered us or triggered a response, but we know we really need to be somewhere else? How do we get out of this mismatch in our head?
So it's a few different ways on this, but the first thing that anyone listening to us needs to understand is in life, you're constantly going to be facing challenges and problems, especially when you're running a business. And what happens to most people is they get stuck in the trenches where they're constantly in a reactive state, just reacting to the problem in front of them. And the issue with that is every time you're reacting, you go into a high stress state of driven by emotion, and that causes you to throw off yourself off your game. And that's why there's such a big difference between a reaction and a response. A reaction is impulsive, it's driven by emotion, whereas a response is calculated and controlled. And this is why if you want to be a highly effective leader, you have to be able to break that cycle. When something goes wrong, you have to force yourself to slow down, to really mentally take a step back and ask yourself, what's actually happened here? Like, why are you getting emotional? What's causing you to be triggered? And from there, you have to shift your focus from the past to what you need to do to move forward. Because so often we're carrying all of that negative emotion with us into everything that we do. And it might be a case of after your pharmacy example, you need to give yourself 15 minutes to just go for a walk, get some fresh air, allow yourself to work through it. For someone else, it could be listening to music, it could be meditating, like whatever it is, you have to give yourself that time to process it. Because if you don't, then you're just going to take that into everything else and you're going to be on this roller coaster ride of ups and downs. And the way I described it in one of my books is it's a lot like a gas tank. If you imagine you start your day with that stressful traffic, then it gets filled up further with that even more stressful meeting, then that difficult conversation, then that big decision you have to make. All of this compounds and builds inside you until eventually there's no room left and it explodes. So something that in isolation wouldn't have mattered pushes you over the edge. And that's why you have to really become aware of why you're feeling the way that you do and allow yourself to slow down and step away through it. Because the most effective leaders, they don't react, they respond. They process problems and then come from it from the mindset of how do we move through this rather than focusing on the past and what they can't change.
What I'm hearing you say is that we are programmed to react. So when something happens that is outside of the pattern or that causes us to have an emotional response, and an emotional response is, frustration, anger, excitement. It could be kind of all different things. So do all emotional responses shut off our ability to respond properly? Or is it a particular type of emotion that prohibits us from understanding how do we find our way through the typical challenges?
It's usually the emotions that are triggered by a negative response. Something like an emotion of feeling happiness and joy isn't really going to make you shut down. It's more of your defense mechanism when you're stressed, you're overwhelmed, you're frustrated. That essentially what's happening on a physiological level there is your blood pressure increases, your cortisol levels go up. This is where you get that brain fog and you can't think clearly. And then you're basing your choices on emotion rather than if you were completely calm and in the moment, you could probably see that something's not that big a deal. But because all of these other factors are in place, you overreact and you don't handle it as your best self. So this is why it's so important to really start to recognize when you're coming from a place of reaction. I've got a client I deal with at the moment as a perfect example. He's one of the most emotional people I've ever come across. And whenever something goes wrong, he just loses temper at his team, or he sends emails that a few minutes later he regrets. And he just kept saying like he's not handling this as the person he knows he could be. So for him, he's had to put buffers in place. Like when a mistake comes up, before he picks up the phone, he's like, I'm just going to wait 15 minutes. I'm going to go calm myself down and I'm not going to have that conversation until I feel grounded. And it's just putting these barriers in place that you're never going into these situations emotional. Because when you do, especially if, let's say it's a difficult conversation, if you and I were about to have a tough chat right now, if I came in really emotional at you, you're going to get defensive, you're going to become emotional and nothing productive is going to come of it. And that's why you really have to start recognizing, why do you feel the way that you do? Whenever you're in that triggered state, you have to step back because you're probably going to make things worse and later that day you're going to regret it. So it's just having that self-awareness to be like, I need to slow down here.
Yes. So here's sort of what I noticed today, because the person, when she realized I was upset about them having, not done what they were supposed to do, which is fill a prescription. And she couldn't look at me. She couldn't come up with a solution. She completely contracted. I could see that her panic response kicked in, right? And I asked to speak to her manager. And thank God, whoever came had the demeanor of saying, all right, let's go through the facts here. When is your procedure? By what time do you need to have that? Here's what I can do for you, right? So we now stepped into solution model. And then as I walked out and I could feel how upset I was, and it's just like a daily ministry, Byron. Just, I think for everybody listening, just, because this stuff happens all the bloody time. And then I went like, okay, what's really going on? And then I'm like, it's really a company that's not training their employees. It's really a company that has terrible systems and processes, because I was getting the text messages, pick up the prescription, pick up the prescription. I didn't realize that what they really meant to say is you have to pay for it and then we get started. So I was under the impression, right, that it was ready, but it wasn't ready. They just wanted to know if I was serious about getting the prescription. So a small change in the system and the strategy that the company would have, that they would need to do is just change the wording of saying complete your order so we can start filling the prescription. That's all. That's the only sentence that it would have needed to be added for this to be a good experience. And then when I realized that I'm going ever so the business consultant, well, maybe that is the opportunity here that, I as a business consultant should call them and tell them that this cannot happen. I cannot be the only person that this happens to, because the system is set up to everybody to fail. So can you take me through the thought process that I just described? And can we break this down for our listener so that they can maybe get your analysis of here's what you did, here's where you were in this decision making, here is what you should have done better, or here's how you can do this even faster? Because, it's so fresh on my mind. I was so mad and I had to really figure out a way to calm myself down. Is that cool if we do that?
Yeah, 100%. Like that's such a fantastic example, because I think this is something that all of us can relate to. Whether someone's such and they've had an issue with a pharmacy, where they've been stuck in traffic, like we all deal with these things constantly. And what you did really well here was you came out of the pharmacy and you just took a moment to take a step back and stop and be like, okay, what's actually going on here? Why am I feeling this way? And what am I getting frustrated over? So you, rather than focusing on the past, you brought it into the present, and your intention went to be like, okay, why am I actually feeling this way? Whereas most people, what would happen is they would come out of the pharmacy, they would just be frustrated, wouldn't even think about it, and they would just be having all of that built up emotion for the rest of the day. So you did really well just coming out and be like, okay, what's actually happening? What has gone wrong? What has led to this? And then you start to see that actually it wasn't that person's fault. It was something that happened on a corporate level that was out of their control. It was just unfortunate that they were the person you were dealing with. So from there, you can start to look rationally at it. You can be like, okay, this wasn't someone doing something intentional against you. It was them just doing their job and something went wrong. Then you start shifting your focus from the past and what went wrong into solutions solution mode. And this is the key thing, because you can't change what happened, but you can change how you respond and what you do about it. So you went straight into this mentality of, okay, well, there's an opportunity here. This is what we could do next time to fix it. This is how it could improve. This is how it can make life better for everyone else. And all of a sudden, you start feeling grounded because you've gone from problem to solution. You've worked through it and moved forward. So I'd say you did that amazingly. Like the point of this mindset is not about making you numb to your emotions. You're human. You're going to get triggered from time to time, but it's how quickly can you turn it around and get control. That's what really matters. So I'd say you did an absolutely fantastic job there, but it came from you slowing down, processing it, and then shifting your intention and focus into what can you do going forward.
Thank you. I appreciate you breaking this down. And when we come back, we dive a little bit deeper into how you can also prohibit yourself from falling into the victim mode of your emotions. We will be right back. Are you looking for the hidden opportunities for you in this market? Or are you simply wanting to figure out what is your unique differentiation factor that makes clients want to work with you and not your competitors? If this resonates, I want to invite you to go to uncoverysession.com and schedule your 15-minute complimentary uncovery session with one of our business growth advisors that will take you through what your number one business growth blocker is, what you can do to remove it, and what your very best next step should be. And now let's get back to the show. Byron, thank you so much for just taking me through sort of the pattern of, this incident at the pharmacy for whatever we call it. But I agree with you. I think these situations happen all the time. And I see this with my clients a lot where they're in a very stressful situation, especially when it comes to change. So I want to talk to you about this a little bit because your book title is, what? Say the book title one more time.
Maybe You Should Give Up.
Yeah, because your book title is Maybe You Should Give Up. And that to me in a business setting is so provocative because I see people when they're committing to change, they say, I'm going to fix my client attraction system. I'm going to fix my authority platform. I'm going to fix how I show up. I'm going to fix my value proposition. I'm going to fix all these things. And then they step into it. And then suddenly it often feels like everything is just imploding, exploding, going kaput. It's nothing like we thought. It was going to be a nice, smooth ride to that next level. What is happening to ourselves in our mind? Are we, as we changing our way of expectation, our way of thinking, it feels like suddenly we are up against pushing this wall and it's so difficult. Why?
That goes back to the title of the book, because I know it's very provocative and it sounds so counterintuitive, but that was the entire point. Because maybe you should give up. It's not about giving up on your goals and dreams. It's about giving up on everything you're holding onto that's stopping you from achieving them. And this is exactly the example you gave us. Someone stepping into this new business realm, and then all of a sudden they're controlled by fear. They're worrying about problems that haven't happened yet. They're being too hard on themselves. They're prioritizing what they want in the moment over what they want more. It's all of these things that keep them stuck. So the whole purpose of the book is all about giving up on everything that's holding you back. Because when you start letting go of these things, that's when you can set yourself free. But to answer your question fully, like the one thing I'd love to explain is what I found over the last decade from working with people in 15 countries is the biggest reason why most people don't achieve their goals is they focus too much on what they want, but they don't figure out who they need to become in order to make it happen. And this goes back to what you said at the very beginning of this episode of your business's growth will never outgrow your inner growth. The reason being is every new level of success requires a new level of you, which is why your current habits, your behaviors, your way of doing things that got you to where you are isn't going to get you to the next level. And if anything, they're the exact reason why you're stuck. And this is why anyone listening to us right now, you need to figure out, okay, knowing your vision and your goals, who is the version of you that turned them into a reality? Really close your eyes and get a mental image of what the version of you would look like who made that happen. And then ask yourself, what did they do in order to get there? What routines did they develop? What behaviors did they create? What non-negotiables did they follow through with every single day that helped them actually make it happen? And then the reason why I love this is you can let go of your current way of operating, your current thoughts, your beliefs, everything that is keeping you where you are, and you can start showing up as that person. It's like if you need to pick up the phone to call a customer or to do a sales call, all these things that you really don't want to do, you have to ask yourself, what would the version of me who's achieved that do right now? Would they make excuses? Would they put it off? Or would they push themselves to take action? Then the way you feel no longer comes into it. You start making decisions as the person you want to become, and then it becomes so much easier to follow through. And that's how you then change your internal wiring, and you actually evolve into that person as a side effect.
I love that you say that. I actually use this all the time when people say, well, how do you do that? I said, well, I decided the person I needed to be, and then I became that. And the only mistake I made is, to your point, that was just to that level. Then there's going to be another level after that and another level. So next thing you know, it never ends, right? Yeah. It's a consistent evolution. Byron, help me out here.
But that's part of the process, though. It's what makes it interesting, because if you just got to an end point, you would very quickly just feel frustrated and stuck, because if you're not growing, then you feel like you're dying. And that's why it is, as you said, a continual evolution. Because for me, like, that is what the journey is all about. It's constantly improving and getting better and pushing yourself to new heights. Because I'm sure you've had periods of your own life where you felt a little bit stuck, where you plateaued, where things didn't seem like they were working. Like, it's very disheartening. But it's when you actually start thinking, okay, how do I need to start showing up better to make this happen? That's when you start improving again. You get to that next level. So yeah, I do advise anyone listening to this, if you're going to do this exercise and figure out who you need to become, do it in 90-day bursts, because 90 days is far enough into the future. It can make a big difference, but it's short enough that it feels tangible. That way you can start tracking, you can measuring it, and then revisit it every 90 days. Yeah, cool. I've got to this level. What's next? Who do I need to become?
I like the idea of 90 days. I'm actually, I took a 90-day mindset challenge to reach a particular goal. And I've done this about a year and a half ago, and I just restarted it. So I'm in day, like, I think 45. And it's very interesting that this time is very different than the first time I've done this, because now stuff happens on a much larger, much more intense scale. And back a year and a half ago, we were in a different environment. Now we are in a hidden opportunity piece in a recession, as we're entering it. So the mindset has shifted one more time. One of the questions I have for you, Byron, that I think are very challenging for most people: how do I know that my decisions are the right decisions? How can I trust my own decision if everybody tells me I'm a nutcase or crazy or insane?
So if you look at the most effective CEOs and leaders, they make decisions based on where they want to get to, not just on where they are. They're always thinking 5 steps ahead. The reason being is often the biggest success and payoff is going to require short-term sacrifice or perceived loss. And if you're just focusing on step number 1, you're always going to look at the reasons why not to do it. I'll use myself as a perfect example of this. When I first started my business close to a decade ago, I was fantastic at what I did on the whole coaching aspect, but I was completely in over my head when it came to growing a business. To be honest, I had no clue what I was doing. And for the first 18 months to 2 years, I just felt like I was banging my head against the wall. I wasn't making money, I wasn't getting clients, just things weren't working. And there was this company I was following at the time who helped businesses exactly like mine. I'd followed all their work, watched their testimonials. I was convinced that they could help me do this. But then I got on the call and spoke to them. They're like, it's going to be $10,000. And at that point in my life, that just seemed like an insurmountable amount of money. I'd been broke for so long. I'd been bootstrapping the business. I'd left my corporate job. It was this huge thing. And I remember I went to my parents and told my friends, and they're like, you can't do that. That's such a big risk. What happens if it doesn't work? They were all focusing on what was going to go wrong. But for me, I was also focusing on looking at it from 2 different angles. I knew if I looked 5 steps ahead, if I worked with these people and they helped me fix my marketing and sales, I could finally start getting revenue. I could then help more people. I could scale the business. I could get the freedom that I wanted. But on the other side of that, if I didn't do this, chances I'd be back in a job in 6 months. So I looked at it from that angle, and all of a sudden I realized I had to make the plunge, because it became a bigger risk not to do it. But the only reason I could help myself actually make that call was I looked 5 steps ahead. I looked at everything I had to gain, not just to what I perceived myself to be giving up. And this is so one of my favorite examples to use in this is Elon Musk. Regardless of how you may feel about him on a personal level, he has failed spectacularly in public fashion so many times. And people are always like, he's being reckless, he's making stupid decisions. But they're looking at step 1. He knows 5 steps ahead exactly why he's doing something. And then 2 years later, everyone's like, he's a genius. I can't believe he did that. It's just yeah, because he was looking at the bigger picture. He knew what he was aiming towards. So you've really got to have that mentality to be like, where am I going? What are the other steps? And what do I then need to go through in order to get there?
I loved what you just said. So I want to stay with your example. actually, because I think a lot of people can relate to that. So now you are there, you're putting out your $10,000. I bet that there was an emotional response that had fear, that had anxiety, that had, like a pit in the stomach, a lump in the throat as you're putting the money down and you're getting started. How did you keep your mindset clean and focused? Because when that fear of having just made a bad decision kicks in, now you're fighting yourself again. So how did you keep that in check?
It was absolutely terrifying. Like at that point in my life, I'd never spent that amount of money on anything. But at the same time, to be honest with you, I'd actually lit a new fire because it backed me into a corner where I was like, I now need to start following through. I need to take what I've invested in and push myself to the next level. And that, going back to that, who do I need to become, forced that evolution for me. I was like, okay, what I was doing wasn't working. I now need to look at how do I adjust this? How do I dive in? If I give myself 90 days to make this happen, because I need to make a return, because I had to go get a business loan from a bank. Like this was, I had to pay this money back. Like this was not something that I could just write off. So for me, I had put myself in a situation where I had to succeed. And mindset wise, that just shifted it for me. I just became laser focused. And there was a tremendous amount of fear, but it's like once I started getting some momentum and I saw things were working, then it became easier. And I was like, okay, this is exactly what I need to do. I now know how to make this happen. And also as well, who I worked with, I had the accountability, I had the support, I had people guiding me because they knew like I had the fear and everything going on. So it wasn't just me trying to do it alone, which is where I see a lot of people actually become their own worst enemy because they're like, I don't need help. I can figure it all out. And they just waste more time and energy. And their emotions actually then become even worse. So for me, mindset wise, actually, to be honest, it made things easier.
I think you said something, and I really want to, point this out as a strategy for today, for all of you listening or watching this, is that what you said, Byron, is so critical today. You said, I am, first of all, going to step into making a decision who I want to be or who I do no longer want to be. Once you make that decision, then something, happens typically because you start attracting the kind of information that you need to get to this level. Because in spirituality and mindset work, from everything I know, you can't perceive it unless it's available for you. Now you're starting to pull these pieces into it. Then you're faced with a decision, which you always will be faced with a big decision. It's either time or money. Most of the time, it is both. If you're not prepared to put in time and money to get to that next level, you're going to stay where you are forever and ever. And you're in this constant infinity loop of trying to find work, doing the work, then not having time to find work, then finding the work, doing the work, not having time to find work. And you keep going and going because you can never scale it up. So what you are saying is that when you make a decision that scares you, that has a monetary commitment to it, it signals a whole different pattern of response in your brain, in your mind. If you heed the call, am I getting this right?
So a lot of people just dabble. A lot of people say that they're all in, but they're kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And this is why a lot of the time you do need to back yourself into a corner. And that doesn't mean you need to put yourself at risk financially or make a huge thing that's going to jeopardize your future. It may just be a case of you need to find a way to burn the boats to figure out, okay, this is what I want. What do I need to do to put myself in a situation that I have to follow through? It's when you can figure out and have the reason behind you that's pushing you to take action, then it becomes so much easier than if you're slightly comfortable and you're like, oh, I don't need to do it today. I don't need to pick up the phone and make that call. I don't need to work on that campaign. I can just play with the font on my website and do busy work, convincing myself from being productive. Because that's part of what I was doing at the beginning. Like I didn't want to do the hard stuff. I convinced myself that I was working. I was trying to grow the business, but I was just doing a lot of stuff that wasn't actually important. And I see so many other people falling into this trap. They just bounce around from one thing to the next. They're not actually putting their energy and attention into the things that truly are going to lead to growth because they're uncomfortable. So you have to find a way to put yourself in a situation that you need to follow through, whether that means asking yourself, what would the version of me that I want to become do right now? Whether that means making the financial commitment, whether it means getting out of your comfort zone and getting rid of plan B, whatever that looks like. If you've got a big vision you want to achieve, you have to find a way to force yourself to actually follow through with it. That is if you truly want it.
Yes, I couldn't agree with you more. And I want to, and please, all of you, just listen to this. This, I think, is the key, really the key to success. When I was $135,000 in debt, and then, and I've been through the fires, floods, riots, earthquake, September 11th, and a tsunami. And there comes a point where it was so deep in it, it was this, or it was a burning, flaming failure. I do believe when you're backed in the corner and you have have to, that you can and you will, as long as you can keep that fear in check, because if it prohibits you from actually doing the work that you need to do. So that, I think, is the key, Byron, that I heard you say today, is you feel the fear and you do it anyway.
You also got to recognize that fear is a good thing, because if you don't have any fear over what you're doing, that's a sign that you're playing too small, because your goals are meant to scare you. So if you're not slightly doubting yourself or feeling a bit anxious about them, that might be a sign that you need to reassess that, are you actually pushing high enough? Because fear is only a bad thing if it's stopping you. Whereas actually, if you're like, do you know what, actually I'm growing here, I'm pushing myself, that means you're moving in the right direction. So you've got to understand what that fear is. Obviously, if it's paralyzing you and stopping you from taking action, then it's a bad thing. You need to figure out why and address it accordingly. But if you've just got a little bit of doubt, then it's a positive. It means actually you're pushing yourself to grow.
I love this so much. This is so powerful, and as I am myself, full disclosure, up leveling, because we are building the sales team. So we are now changing all of our sales processes and the way we do things and how we do the pre-vetting, and there are parts in it that are anxiety producing, and where and I've done this for a long time, Byron, but I love that you say that at every level of your business growth or every level of your personal growth, you will encounter these barriers, and you feel the fear, you embrace the fear, you acknowledge the fear. You need to have the fear, otherwise you're just dilly-dallying on a level that might not even be worthy for you. So tell us a little bit about the book. Maybe You Should Give Up. Where do we get the book? What will we be learning?
So you can get the book anywhere that you can order books. And this is a book about helping you get out of your own way so that you can stop sabotaging yourself and get to the next level of success. And basically, on my journey of doing what I've done for the last decade, what I discovered is there's 7 mental barriers that every single one of us struggle with that holds us back and causes us to actually stop getting the results we want, whether that's fear, being in a reactive state, comparing yourself to others, worrying about problems that haven't happened yet. We have these mental blocks that cause us to get stuck. And the analogy that I use in the book is it's a lot like climbing a mountain. If you imagine yourself at the bottom and you have this bag of rocks on your back and they're so heavy that they stop you from moving forward, where every single one of these mental blocks, it's like taking a rock out of the bag and helping you become lighter so you can start to progress and climb up that mountain until you finally reach the final barrier, which is putting off your happiness. So ultimately, this is a book that takes you on a journey where you can get out of your own way, get out of your own head, and take control of the life that you want, and finally actually get the joy and happiness you deserve. Yeah, like I said, it's available anywhere that you can order books. And if anyone does grab a copy, send me an email, because I've got some great bonuses, including the audio book and some other video series as well. So yeah, reach out to me at byron@byronmorrison.com and I'll get all that sent across to you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your generosity. And, for all of you who've been following and listening to me for a long time, I'm big on mindset. I do not think that it is possible to be successful in life, in business, anywhere, unless you got the mindset and really step into the leader that you were meant to be. So Byron, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And that's it for us today. Thank you so much for listening. This is Beate Chelette, the Growth Architect, and goodbye. Thank you for listening to or watching the show. We are so excited that you're here, and we are very grateful for you. Now it's our turn to ask you for help. Please do share this episode with one other person that needs to hear what we were talking about today. A 5-star review and a comment is very appreciated, because it helps us to get the word out to more people, because we get better rankings. If there's any question you have about business, please do reach out to us and let us know. And don't forget to schedule your complimentary uncovery session at uncoverysession.com, where one of our business growth advisors will help you to figure out what your number 1 business growth blocker is in only 15 minutes. And that's it for us today. Until next time.